Picture this. Sarah just got her first real job out of college, making $50,000 a year. She's excited, optimistic, and already planning how she'll save money and build wealth. Fast forward 10 years. She's making twice as much, $100,000 annually. But somehow she feels more financially stressed than ever before. Her bank account looks almost identical to when she was making half the income. Meanwhile, her friend Marcus started at the same company, same salary, same opportunities. Today, Marcus has over $200,000 saved and invested. Both intelligent people, both hardworking, both started from the exact same place. So what happened? My name is Jimmy, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, investing, and the psychology behind how people use it. If you're someone who wants to understand money a little better, consider subscribing and giving this video a thumbs up. Here's what most people don't realize about earning your first $100,000. It's not just about the math, the budgeting, or even the discipline. There's something much deeper happening in your brain that makes this specific milestone the most psychologically challenging amount of money you'll ever accumulate. Let me tell you about the invisible trap that catches almost everyone. When Sarah started earning $50,000, she lived in a modest apartment, drove a reliable used car, and ate out maybe once a week. She was proud of herself for being financially responsible. But here's where things get interesting. As her income slowly increased year after year, something strange started to happen in her mind. Each raise felt like permission to upgrade her lifestyle just a little bit. A slightly nicer apartment because she deserved it after working so hard. A newer car because the old one was starting to have problems. More dinners out because she could finally afford to enjoy life a little. But this creates a bigger problem that most people never see coming. The human brain has this fascinating quirk called lifestyle inflation, but it's not just about spending more money. It's about how your identity starts to change based on your income level. When Sarah was making $50,000, she saw herself as someone who needed to be careful with money. When she hit $70,000, she started seeing herself as someone who had made it to the middle class. At $90,000, she began to feel like she should live like someone who makes $90,000. And this is where most people make a huge mistake. They think wealth building is about earning more money, but wealth building is actually about widening the gap between what you earn and what you spend. Sarah's gap stayed exactly the same even though her income doubled. Now look, there's a reason why this happens, and it's not because people are bad with money or lack willpower. Your brain is actually working against you in ways you don't even realize. Every time Sarah got a raise, her brain released a little hit of dopamine, the same chemical that makes you feel good when you eat chocolate or get a text message. But here's the cruel part. That dopamine hit doesn't last. Within a few weeks, her new salary felt normal. Psychologists call this hedonic adaptation, and it's why lottery winners often end up no happier than they were before winning millions of dollars. So what does Sarah's brain do? It starts looking for the next hit of dopamine. Maybe it's that nicer apartment. Maybe it's the car upgrade. Maybe it's just the feeling of being able to buy something without checking her bank account first. But something strange starts to happen when you're trying to reach that first $100,000. You start to realize that the math is working against you too. Let's say Sarah manages to save $5,000 her first year. That $5,000 represents 10% of her total goal. She can actually see meaningful progress. But the next year, when she saves another $5,000, it only represents 5% of her goal. The same effort, the same amount of money, but it feels like she's making less progress. And almost nobody talks about this part. The closer you get to $100,000, the more painful each financial setback becomes. When Sarah had $20,000 saved and her car needed a $3,000 repair, she lost 15% of her progress. It stung, but she bounced back. When she had $80,000 saved and faced the same $3,000 expense, it felt devastating, even though it was a smaller percentage of her wealth. Here's where it gets really interesting, though. While Sarah was fighting these psychological battles, her friend Marcus was quietly doing something completely different. Marcus understood something that most people miss entirely. He realized that the hardest part about building wealth isn't the sacrifice required when you're broke. When you're broke, sacrifice feels temporary, like you're paying your dues. The hardest part is continuing to sacrifice when you finally start earning decent money, because that's when sacrifice starts to feel permanent. So Marcus made a decision that seemed crazy to everyone around him. When he got his first big raise from $50,000 to $60,000, instead of lifestyle inflation, he committed to lifestyle deflation. He actually moved to a smaller, cheaper apartment. He started biking to work instead of driving. He began cooking at home more than ever before. But the real issue isn't what you think. Marcus wasn't just being cheap or depriving himself. He was rewiring his brain to find satisfaction in a completely different place. See, most people get their financial satisfaction from spending money. They feel successful when they can afford something new. But Marcus trained himself to get satisfaction from watching his net worth grow. Every month, seeing that number increase gave him the same dopamine hit that Sarah got from buying things. This created something psychologists call a positive feedback loop. The more money Marcus saved, the better he felt. The better he felt, the more motivated he became to save even more money. Meanwhile, Sarah was trapped in the opposite cycle. The more she spent, the more she needed to spend to get that same feeling of satisfaction. Now you might be thinking, this sounds miserable. What's the point of earning more money if you're not going to enjoy it? And that's a fair question, but here's what Marcus discovered that changed everything. When you're trying to accumulate your first $100,000, you're not just building wealth. You're building something much more valuable: financial confidence. You're proving to yourself that you can control your money instead of letting your money control you. Marcus realized that every dollar he saved wasn't just a dollar. It was evidence. Evidence that he could make long-term decisions instead of short-term ones. Evidence that he could delay gratification. Evidence that he could build something meaningful instead of just consuming whatever was in front of him. And this is where things get really powerful. Once Marcus hit that $100,000 mark, something incredible happened in his brain. He had proven to himself that he could accumulate wealth, which meant he could do it again. The second $100,000 took him less than half the time as the first $100,000. But Sarah remained stuck in the same cycle. Even when she eventually started making six figures, she still felt like she was living paycheck to paycheck because her expenses had grown to match her income. Here's the thing, though. This isn't a story about willpower or discipline. This is a story about understanding how your psychology changes as your income increases, and having a plan for those changes. The reason the first $100,000 is so hard isn't because you don't earn enough money. It's because you haven't yet learned to separate your self-worth from your spending. You haven't learned that the goal isn't to live like you make $100,000. The goal is to live like you make $60,000 while earning $100,000. And invest the difference. Most people think that wealth building gets easier as you earn more money, but that's backwards. Wealth building gets easier as you develop more self-awareness about why you want to spend money in the first place. When Marcus wanted to buy something expensive, he developed a habit of asking himself a simple question: am I buying this because I need it, because I want it, or because I want other people to think I can afford it? That third option is where most people's financial dreams go to die. Because here's what nobody tells you about money. The people who look wealthy usually aren't. The people who are actually wealthy usually don't look it. Real wealth isn't about having nice things. Real wealth is about having options. It's about knowing that you could survive for months or even years without your job. It's about being able to take risks because you have a financial cushion. It's about sleep that isn't interrupted by anxiety about money. And this brings us to the most important insight of all. Your first $100,000 isn't just the hardest money you'll ever make because of lifestyle inflation or hedonic adaptation or any of these psychological concepts we've talked about. It's the hardest money you'll ever make because it forces you to decide who you really are. Are you someone who uses money as a tool to build freedom and security? Or are you someone who uses money as a way to signal status and feel better about yourself in the moment? That decision, more than your income, your investment returns, or your budgeting skills, will determine whether you become wealthy or stay broke forever. Sarah and Marcus both had the same opportunities, the same starting point, the same potential. But they made different choices about what money meant to them, and those choices compounded into completely different financial realities. Your first $100,000 is waiting for you, not in your next raise or your next job, but in your willingness to live below your means. Invest the difference, and find satisfaction in building something that lasts instead of buying something that fades.